We'll see what happens.
Okay.
We'll see what happens.
Hello, and welcome to Salem Lutheran Church and our meeting with Bishop Barbins. I'm not going to waste time doing a terrible introduction, so I'm going to let her do her own. So here she is, Bishop Barbins.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is a delight to be with you. Let me tell you just a little bit. So I've been in the office as bishop. And I should tell you that if I look off into the middle distance, it's because I'm looking at Pastor Nathan, not at some other weird thing.
Because I'm so good looking.
Yes. He's a live face, and I resonate with live faces very much. I came to the office of bishop. I was elected in September of 2020. So all of the bishops that were elected in 2020 consider themselves the COVID bishops. I was elected in September, and I took office December 1st of 2020. So I've been in office just long enough for the new bishop smell to have worn off. Previous to this call, I was in a congregation in the middle of Geauga County, in the county seat of Chardon. And for those of you who don't know, today is the 10th anniversary of the Chardon school shooting. I was the pastor of Celebration. When that happened, I was their pastor for 19 years. So it was a really long tenure and a great place to be. Before that, I was an interim on the west side at Messiah Fairview Park, which is one of our larger congregations. It has a school, a K-8 school. And then prior to that, my first call was in Nashville, Tennessee, at Holy Trinity. I know. And I was there for 2 years. And then I took some time off because the reason I was in Nashville is I was working on a PhD at Vanderbilt University. So I have a PhD in homiletics and New Testament. Homiletics is the fancy church word for preaching. So we have to have fancy church words for everything. So I am married to a Baptist pastor. He lives by Paul's words. St. Paul enjoined the followers of Jesus to marry the heathens in the hopes of converting them. And so my Baptist husband is heeding St. Paul's words to do exactly that. He is a Baptist pastor in a ethnic congregation, the ethnic congregation that his grandfather started. He's first generation immigrant from Latvia. His parents and his grandparents all immigrated post-World War II from Latvia. Right now, Latvia is in the news because they are a former satellite of the Soviet Union. They're right on the edge of Russia, and they're a little afraid right now because of Putin's movement into Ukraine. They figure they're not too far behind. So besides being a pastor in this little community that he has, which is mostly Octanana and Centarians, he is also a spiritual director and works at St. Ignatius High School in downtown Cleveland. In their spirituality program for adults. And he works with faculty, staff, alumni, and parents, and helps provide spiritual direction, retreats, and those kinds of discipleship enrichment, faith enrichment opportunities. He loves that work. That's really great. He'll be here this morning. So if you're in church this morning, you'll get to meet him. He'll be the one that you don't know. We have 4 daughters together. They range in ages from 14 to 21. The oldest is graduating from the University of Pittsburgh this spring. The other 3 still live at home. And daughter number 2 will be going to Baldwin Wallace, a hometown school, starting in the fall. So we're very proud of her. And then we all think we're a little nuts, but we have just decided to adopt a puppy. It's so new, we have not even decided on the puppy's name yet. So I can't even divulge what the puppy's name is.
What kind of dog is it?
The dog is a Labrador, full bred. My brother and sister-in-law and nephew have a chocolate lab, and my nephew asked, can she please have puppies? And as I was saying earlier, before we tuned on, my brother is retired Navy Air, and so he has nothing but time on his hands, and he was like, sure. So they now have 6 puppies, and that was the end of that. So we got a black one from that litter.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Jack Russell at home, so.
Oh, that's a lot of energy.
Well, he's getting old like me. So.
Oh, then he's probably a little. The last dog
Just
I
to-
had was a beagle.
Bishop, as you were saying that you were going to adopt, I was thinking that maybe you would have an opportunity to meet one of the 11 puppies my daughter just recently had, that she's in
Your
process of.
daughter had puppies?
My daughter had 11 puppies, Bernese Mountain Dog puppies.
Isn't that
And
really-
those 11 puppies are driving them incredibly nutty right now. So they're looking for families for these puppies.
Oh.
They're all purebred, AKC registered. They're beautiful puppies. So anybody knows out there needs a puppy, they're available.
What kind
They're
are
8
they?
weeks old. What's that?
What kind are they?
They're called Bernese Mountain Dogs.
Big dog, huge dog.
Is
And,
that a
they're-
small dog?
That is not a small dog. That is what you would call a medium to large dog. They get to right around 100 pounds.
Yeah, no, that's too
And-
big
Oh,
Yeah,
for me.
and they are lap dogs.
They're lap dogs.
At least they think they are.
Oh my.
So they are wonderful. They got great personalities. They love having discussions with you, and they are have personalities all of their own. It's amazing. But anyway, as you were talking, I did have some questions submitted, and I wanted to get to those as we could.
Sure.
And some of them were about the very topic you had brought up during your intro about the Ukraine issues. The question came up, is the ELCA involved currently in the issues in Ukraine?
So if I were to say anything, I don't know of any efforts by the ELCA. There's no statements that have come out that I have seen. But we would be mobilizing humanitarian efforts, most definitely. Disaster relief, even ELCA World Hunger, and other ELCA humanitarian efforts would be mobilizing to go in and help. It is also, the ELCA would be working with we all have global partners with other Lutheran synods or dioceses in the rest of the world. And so certainly we have relationships with the Lutheran Church in Ukraine, as well as in Poland and Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, all of the surrounding areas, even Russia. We have relationships with Lutherans in Russia. And so we would most likely be working to help those boots on the ground, if you will, and to find out. Of course, the LCA would be in prayer. We are in prayer for the people of Ukraine, as well as the people of Russia. Sometimes we forget that not all the people are always on board with what their leaders are doing. And quite frankly, this movement by President Putin is going to have some severe consequences for the people of Russia. And then if we think about the fact that here in the United States, there are Russian immigrants living right next to, in some cases, Ukrainian immigrants. And so our prayers would be that we would not we wouldn't then characterize all Russians think like Vladimir Putin. So we would want to be in prayer about that. So the short answer to that question, Tim, is I do not know that there has been any statement that has come out other than, there's no official statement that has come out, but I'm sure there are behind the scenes efforts going on to help refugees, help with humanitarian efforts, and help to bolster
Excuse me.
faith and boots on the ground.
You had said that, and I want to just pile on this comment because there are news reports that over 1,500, almost 2,000 people have been arrested in Russia for protesting against the invasion. So there are definite Russians that are not in favor of this invasion.
Yes.
So, and Don has joined us now from Chile.
Ooh.
So welcome,
Hi,
Don.
Don.
Good morning.
Good
Good morning.
morning. How are things in Chile?
Well, it's still cool this morning, only about 65 degrees, but it'll probably
Only?
drop to about 90.
You poor man. You don't understand how you can handle it at 60 some degrees. Thank you.
A mínimo.
All right, Pastor or Bishop, I have another question here.
Hi.
One of the folks had asked about the Dandelion Project, and we wanted to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So the Dandelion Project is
De la live, ¿no?
it
De live.
is an initiative that our synod has taken on. We together are paying for a consultant. His name is Dave Daubert, and he is currently working with 10 congregations on some revitalization efforts, helping them with mission, ministry, and what it looks like to be a church that has deep roots so that it can reach out. I like to we use the image of that dandelion because if any of you have ever tried to get rid of dandelions, you know that they're stubborn because they have these great deep tap roots. And if we if we are able to get our congregations to have these deep tap roots that are sunk into who God is and who Jesus is, then we too, as congregations, can be stubborn and hard to kill off. Dandelions are also one of the early pollinators in the springtime, which means that they provide early sustenance for bees and early in the spring. And so that means that once we have these deep tap roots, we're able to put out these flowers that then feed things around us. And finally, dandelions grow that puff on the top. So they're prolific. Again, if you've ever tried to get rid of them, you know that if you have one, you have many. And so they send out those puffs. So they have a multiplying factor. So the idea here is that we sink our roots deep into the ground. If you remember the story of Mary and Martha in the Gospels, where Mary is sitting at Jesus's feet and Martha is running around doing this and that, making the roast and mashing the potatoes and setting the table and pouring the wine, and Mary's just sitting there, and Martha is madder than a hen. And so she goes to Jesus and she's like, tell her to get off her duff and do something. And Jesus says, she's exactly where she needs to be. So there's a sense in which sinking our roots down first, establishing our faith first, really deepening our own individual and congregational relationships with Christ is so important to do first before we start reaching out. And then we reach out, but always we want to come back to that deep tap root and keep nourishing, because if we just keep doing and doing and doing, we get grouchy like Martha, and start just griping. I'm doing it all. Not that we've ever heard that in any church ever, right? So the Dandelion Project is, practically speaking, is a 18 to 24 months long, where congregations work together. They work in little cohorts. They each get a coach that helps them move through this process and keeps them on task, and strengthens who they are as a congregation. There is there is a cost for the congregation itself. It is a cost of $1,000, and that covers the coaching fees. So the person who coaches you, everything else we are covering at the synod level. We're going to be taking in another round of congregations this coming spring. We're going to be accepting applications. It is important that the congregation have a well-established pastor in their midst. So at this point in time, this place, Salem, would not necessarily be in a candidate for the Dandelion Project, but there are some other programs coming down the line that I think will help Salem. I will encourage Salem to do, and would then get you in a position to move into the Dandelion Project in a future co-op. I hope that answers that person's question.
I think it did.
Yes,
Um,
it does.
The next question is more specific to the Synod, I guess. How many churches in our Synod are currently without a called pastor?
About 30%.
30, we're above 30%?
We're at
All right.
about 30% are without a pastor.
Okay.
Well, without, let me set, hold on. Without a settled pastor. So that means they're an interim. They're being termed an interim, even though they might have been there for 8 years. Or a stated supply. So about 30%. We are working very hard. We have Synod Council adopted, and about this time last year, what we call our spine tingling goal. And our spine tingling goal was to get a settled pastor, deacon, or trained lay leader in every congregation in our synod by Synod Assembly of 2023. And so we are working through various channels to get to that point. And so we have managed now for about 6 months straight now, we have managed to move more congregations into pastors than have lost pastors. So that's a good trend.
So as we are one of those churches, what are our options at this point for hiring a pastor or having a trained lay or deacon take a position?
Yeah. So first of all, we don't hire pastors, of course, we call pastors. It's a totally different thing. Your options, it depends on where you think you are as a congregation. If you have funding to call a full-time pastor, I will tell you, I cannot find pastors who want to work half-time. And half-time pastors are not going to help Salem. So there's a full-time pastor. That's one of your options. The second option is to partner with other congregations in your area. And that partnership could take a couple of different kinds of avenues. You could share office staff, for example. If you have office staff, I'm not even sure what Salem has, but if you had office staff, you could share office staff, which then frees up some internal funds towards a pastor. You could share musicians. You could take it a step further and form a parish relationship where you could have where you could join with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 congregations, and between you call 2 pastors and a deacon, and they would rotate serving all of those congregations, and you would end up doing a lot of ministry together. And you would keep your identity, your building, but be able to focus in on what you do best as a congregation, and then outsource the things you don't do well. So let's say Vacation Bible School is just not Salem's thing. But at a church down the road that you're in a parish with, they do a really great Vacation Bible School. So you look at your people and you're like, this summer, we say, go down there and do Vacation Bible School. So you're part of this parish, you keep your identity, you keep your name as Salem Lutheran Church. The next level is to actually merge with another congregation. And then you would, in essence, you would close this congregation and take on the name of a different congregation. You might be able to keep this building as a second campus for that other congregation, but that's another option. Of course, holy closure is, that's something that can happen, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. All things die, even Jesus, but we serve a God of resurrection who says, I bring life out of death. There is, should Salem get to a point where you could call a full-time pastor, then we would get you into that loop. We're working on figuring out a lay school for training lay leaders, but I will tell you that that is in its early stages. And even if we did that, that process would then have to go for probably a year or two before we would have anybody who was a trained lay leader that I could then authorize as a synodic, we call them SAMs, synodically authorized ministers, and that's a lay person who can distribute sacraments. So those are some of the options. I don't know the specifics of here at Salem other than having met Pastor Nathan just this morning. So moving forward and trying to figure out what that looks like. But I will tell you that sharing a pastor with someone so that you have the pastor 50% of the time and somebody else has the pastor 50% of the time is not a very good model. And here's why. One, it wears a pastor down. Pastor Nathan, would you like it if you had 2 council meetings a month? He's shaking his head
I don't even like one.
He doesn't even like one. If you could imagine 2 council meetings a month, 2 worship meetings a month, 2 stewardship, right? So it's wearing for a pastor. The second thing is it keeps a congregation just treading water because the pastor is so busy just going to these meetings. There's not a whole lot of time for creativity, for mission mindedness. And finally, it's a right ground for bickering between the 2 congregations. Well, pastor is spending more time over at St. John's by the gas station than at here, right? And you get, you start sniping like, we're not getting as much time. And, oh, yes, you are. You have just, you know how that is. It's sibling rivalry, right? And it's just not.
Yes.
It's just not good. It's just because there's no way to prove it unless a pastor then starts keeping a log, right? And is that really how you want your pastor spending precious time? Is, okay, I just got off a 22-minute conversation with somebody from Salem Lutheran Church. So now I have to go have a 22-minute conversation with somebody from St. John's by the gas station, right? Like, ew.
No.
Yeah. So it's just not a
No.
good model for the 21st century. So,
Tim, we've sort of reached the end of our time. It's 9:30. Did you want to go on for a little bit or do you want to cut it?
We
Tim,
can go on for a little bit.
because the bishop's going to need some time to get ready for church.
Yeah, we probably, yeah, we should probably do that. All right. Well, thank you very much, Bishop. Just for, we will be continuing this conversation after the service with our fellowship. We do have a meal coming, and we'd love to have you and your husband join us for that meal, if at all possible. We can continue that conversation in our fellowship hall area downstairs, and
perfect.
hopefully somebody makes better coffee than I did. And we will move on from there. So thank you very much, Bishop, for joining us this Sunday and
It's
answering
my
these questions.
pleasure.
Yeah, and we'll get to see you in the live stream very shortly. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you very much.